The conversation is on, everyone. 31 years after June 12, 1993, how is Nigeria's democracy faring? We're trying to get answers. Professor Anthony Kila is Commonwealth Institute Director and June 12 Chairman. Thank you so much for staying the course on the program.
Good to be here.
So we've seen a lot of talks, a lot of efforts by the previous government to better honor the man, MKO Abiola. The former president did that, changing June 12 to Democracy Day. Well, let's talk about the mantra renewed hope. Vis-a-vis the Hope 93, because the previous report we saw tried to the campaign, mantra for this administration is about renewing that hope. Yeah. Do you think it places so much pressure on President Tinubu to perform and to bring the hope that Nigerians have been yearning for 3 decades plus?
Well, let me say 3 things. Number one is that not everybody tried to recognize June 12. Let's be clear. The only person that recognized June 12 was Buhari, who, I'm known to criticize him for a lot of things. So, I am historically and morally bound to recognize that he was the one that recognized June 12. I didn't actually believe it didn't happen because of my bias against him, but, facts are sacred, so you accept it. Jonathan did some confusing thing from trying to change Unilag to trying the same thing, but he was trying to recognize Abiola, not June 12. Obasanjo simply ignored the matter. So, we have to be accurate with history. So the ones who have done something were Buhari and now this president who has gone out of his way to do a lot about it. So that is that. Is he putting pressure on the president? Well, let's start by saying that nobody forced him to go and take the renewed hope. He and his people sat down and say, we are going to choose the renewed hope. It's not that they could have taken something else. They are the one who do it. And the reason they did it is because in reality, they belong to that political family, it must be said. Because all the people you've shown, starting from Dela Lake, who was an editor of the Concord owned by MK Abiola, Ononoga, they all belong to, before Nadeko, they all belong to the Abiola political family. So their formation politically is largely influenced by that. So, and including the president himself, Bola Tinubu, he belongs to that school of thought. So it is natural. It's only, when people say, why did they pick that thing? It's a bit lack of understanding of history. It's only natural that they'll try to do that. And there is something we must say, good and bad. They think Abiola's vision and the Hope 93 vision, I try not to personalize a lot because it's never one man. One man will be a symbol. That's why when I talk about president and presidency all the time, that vision of Hope 93, there's a general belief among progressives and Democrats that that vision is yet to be realized. And this is a chance to realize it, hence the renewed hope thing. There is something sad for it for the rest of us. To say that something they were trying to do in 92, 93, we still have the same problem in 2024. That is the problem. So to that extent, I do not agree that there's pressure on the president because one, he chose it himself, not me. Two, because those problems are known problems that have been there for 33 years, one will expect, the intuition, the ready intuition is that one will expect people to have thought about it long enough to go there. Because what are our problems? Compounded insecurity, but there's a bit of it, it's just compounded now. Power, light, the same thing Abiola was talking about. Say power, light, water, roads, the same thing he was campaigning about. Sadly for us, those problems are still there today. The GSM thing was not there, so you can't list that one. That has been stopped. Let me use this time to remind telecom people to improve their services, but go ahead.
All right, so I have 2 questions and a reaction to the package you just saw.
Yes.
So I read an article where one of the activists in the June 12th struggle said, let me quote him, those who fought military dictatorship in order to birth our present democratic experience never inherited the dividends of democracy. How true is this opinion?
Well, it's not totally true. There's a problem here. Dividends of democracy is a Nigerian expression that I'm not really comfortable with. It's the popular expression, but I don't like it. There's something pedestrian
like
about
dividends
it.
Of democracy.
Yeah, the people just think it's good. The pedestrian language. Dividends of what? Are we shareholders? What did we invest in it? Those kind of language, they get popular, but they lack the depth I would like. I would like to talk about, but let's follow it. I'd rather talk about good governance which is what we're trying
But
to
there are
do.
basic elements like respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, free speech,
They're not dividends, they're features.
separation of
If you want
powers.
to, you might call it being semantical, but the reason why the activists you talk about dividends of democracy is because there are two kind of, using that language, dividends of democracy. The one of free speech, good governance, is what the people look out for. The one activists look out for is a stab at power, because they want to be there. And I want our viewers to follow these things well. Those who invented zoning, those who invented no to Muslim ticket, those who invented rotation, they're just elites trying to look for a way to get into power. It is not that they believe it in principle. And I want the followers to look at it. This idea that, the North has had it, the South has had it, the this has had it, it's just an invention. It's an invention of elites. So when they say those who fought for it have not gotten dividends of democracy, what they're alluding to is that the activists have not been given a chance to rule, which is neither here nor there, because some of them have been given, some of them have not been given. But if you tell me that the democracy that was imagined and fought for is not the one we have here, I can agree to that. A lot has been done, much more needs to be done. Because in this country, we still have things like police brutalizing people, we still have government not being very accountable, we still have sectors of our economy, especially oil and gas, which is a national asset, that is still opaque and not very transparent. We still have a dysfunctional bureaucracy where people think just because they have their office, they can extort you. We use the word bribe, but extortion is a stronger word to describe what it is. We still have a situation where we call it a federation, but it's not very federal. In a federal republic, everything from wages to laws will be different from the state you live in. The strength, you go to some states and you will see that their strength here is technology and trade. In other states, you will see it's a rural area, and it doesn't mean they are better off or worse than each other. That is to federalism, that embrace diversity. We're not there yet, so much more needs to be done. To that extent, yes, the dividends, which I call feature, we're not fully.
All right, now that you said feature, another feature of democracy is fundamental human rights.
Yes.
How well are these protected in Nigeria?
I think a lot more needs to be done, but some things haven't done, because if you've ever been arrested under the military, some dollar that stood you to frog jump, to then realize that I can say all the things I say in this studio and walk out and drive away, knowing that nothing will happen. If you can juxtapose that kind of thing, we have made some progress. But the problem is, with all the progress we've made, some journalists are still being arrested. I want people to know that the arrest of a journalist in the democratic system should be an aberration. It should be 1 over 1,000 possibility. So when you have little things like that, you still worry that it's not. So in terms of human rights, we still have that kind of problem there, which we need to work on. I think we just need to understand that democracy is not a point of arrival. It's a process. And we need to keep working on that process, from primaries to nominations, from even the way people behave. It's part of things. So that you see people, that when they argue, that you should understand that arguments and conversations should be heard without interrupting each other. You yield the floor. It's all those kind of little things. And you don't call somebody's boy, and you don't insult each other because you're a politician. That is part of the process to have true democracy.
It sounds like we're not where we used to be, but we're still a long way from where we should be.
Well, yeah, we can say that. We can say that. We have made some steps, but, much more needs to be done. Let's
talk about free and fair elections. Mr. President earlier today talked about the fact that, elections can be quite dramatic, but they're just an aspect of democracy.
Yeah.
And then he now went on to say that we've been able to establish a tradition of holding transparent, open, and fair elections, which gives credence to our democratic bearing. I know that's a little bit controversial, but some would say that 31 years after, it really has gotten better. Do you agree?
Well, the president would say that, wouldn't he? He won. So he would say everything is fine, wouldn't he? I mean, that's expected of him to say. No, I believe he's excessively optimistic about it, that his view does not reflect reality. So democratic system should be a system where when you vote and results come out, in a good system, you shouldn't question it. It should just be clear to you that it's
But
like that.
that's debatable.
You're talking about the ideal, right?
I'm talking about the ideal. I always talk about
I can also
ideal.
take you back to those days when Mike Tyson used to be on our voter register.
Yes.
Before the days of, you know, what do we have now? It's a permanent voter card and then some level of digitization.
We can do that.
You don't see the improvement, do you?
Well, I see it. I mean, I see what you mean, but here's the thing. We need to be careful. If you have a child who is 12 years old or 14 years old and wets the bed, and you say, okay, he used to wet the bed 3 times a night. Now he wets it only 2 times. So let's give glory to God. Yeah, you know, you can give testimony in church for that he's not wetting the bed 4 times a night now. He's wetting, but ideally he shouldn't wet in the bed at all. You know, and we need to go for the ideal, not rejoice on little steps. We need to know that we can get it right. The question should be, for me, the issue our thinkers and patriots, and especially those people paid, the INEC people paid to do election, what they should be saying is that how do we get it right in a way that nobody has problem? I hate to trivialize, but in this same country, people don't contest Big Brother. They get the result and everybody have an idea that, okay, that's the winner. You just say, well, not to the point of saying, oh, they've cheated them or everything. They're not happy with the result.
Lately, they've started debating.
They've started debating the win. Well,
there's human factor in every...
Absolutely.
Even the U.S. election, at some point...
I know, you see, that's not this...
There were conversations about whether it was influenced by Russia or not.
Yes, there are things like that, but those are new phenomena. The U.S. election has been going on for centuries until the man with the orange head came in and he turned to something else. Those are beeps in history. The question we should be asking ourselves, how do we make sure it's not possible? My solution is that we need to decentralize our system. We need to devolve powers, and we need to digitalize our process. Decentralizing power means, decentralizing the whole system means that when you vote, what matters to you is your ward or your polling unit. If everybody in Nigeria can say, where I voted, they did not cheat, we'll be fine. Instead of waiting for one man to keep us...
Is that realistic?
Sorry, what?
Is that realistic?
Oh, very realistic. I have stood for election in another country, and that was done.
But given the complexity of this country and Nigerians, as I'm asking, is that realistic?
I think it's realistic. You see, the complexity of Nigeria is because there are some people in this country who have become experts in making the simple complicated for the purpose of obtaining nothing, of obtaining evil. We should strive to simplify things. It is very possible to digitalize voting and make it very local. So what happens is this. In your polling unit, how many people vote in a polling unit? Maximum of a reasonable number. You vote there, you see the vote, it's counted. Everybody goes home knowing that in my polling unit, this is what happens. And there and then, you lay that system there. There are photocopies of it. You see, when we talk about election irregularity, we make it sound as if it's an accident due to complications. It is not. It is a group of some of us, and it must be said, who are cheats, who are fraudulent people who decide to maneuver what is true. All right. They are crooks, it must be said. Whether they do it for good, great things, it doesn't matter. But election malpractices is not an accident. Violence in election is not something that happened to us because we just fell from the sky. It is some people who sit down in a room and say, let us go there and beat them up.
Absolutely. So I understand your point, and I've also heard you talk about securing the future of Nigeria through a democratic people's constitution. I think that's what your program today was about, calling for a people's constitution in Nigeria. Where are we as a nation as regard ongoing constitutional review? Because a lot is coming up. You had some House of Reps members saying, let's have a 6-year tenure. Let's have rotational presidency. Do you think we're making progress in reviewing that document substantially to cause a major change?
I think we're. I think people are saying things that I like. They're talking about regionalism. The 6-year tenure, I'm not very sure. We need to look at that one closely because, but I think they're saying things that touches the constitutional amendment some of us would like. But the point is this. There is something crucial about having a people constitution. For starters, when the Nigerian constitution starts by saying we the people, it's a lie. It's not the people, it's the military that gives that. That's already a problem. But there's also something legal about it. You see, a constitution, as Heinz Kells would say, is a ground norm. It is the foundation upon which everything is built. If you allow people to choose the kind of foundation, it's like people buying houses. If you allow people to choose the kind of house they want, they will choose something that suits their aspirations and their constraints. So we believe that a people's constitution will allow, especially after what we've seen in the past years, will allow people to imagine what can go wrong and choose a new way of living together that will save them from all those
Just hold that
possible
thought
things.
a bit. But we have images showing dignitaries at the presidential villa. Attention is turning there tonight. A dinner holding at the State House Banquet Hall, a presidential villa, where we expect dignitaries to gather in continuation of celebration of Nigeria's 25th year of unbroken democratic rule. So between this issue of constitutional review, has been on for a long time, and it's beginning to look like there is no end to it, especially when you hear people say, can we boycott the National Assembly, which doesn't even sound legal from where we stand, because you cannot tamper with that document without going through them.
Well, I think where there's a will, it's very possible. The National Assembly itself, and there's a legal paper on this, the National Assembly itself, in conjunction with the executive, can convene a constituent assembly. You see how long it took to pass the national anthem. They can do it very quickly if they really wanted to do it. Convene National Assembly of maybe, 3 people per state, 1 from the federal government. On my calculation, that's 109 people, men and women. I underline, not men alone. Get them in the room and say, go and review the 2014 confab and come up with a constitution. We also need to understand that in 2024, everything is digital. Life moves quickly. The world changed, contrary to what people say. The day Polaroid camera came, where you can take a picture and take it instantly. These days, if you send somebody a message and they don't reply, you get agitated. Absolutely. Everything is instant. We can't do those kind of long things anymore.
Well, it's a good place to live it. I think it's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
We're hopeful for a better Nigeria.
Yes.
They say that we're making some progress. We need them to pick up the pace, no doubt at all,
yes,
especially given the current reality many Nigerians are faced with. But it's always a good time to have you, hear you talk about these things. Professor Anthony Kila, thank you for talking to us.
Good to be here. Thank you.
All right, so upon returning from his overseas trip, the